On the American side, you have bam, bam, bam. On the Asian side, you have and it's like a tree with a lot of roots. It just grows.
Good attitudes. Come on, have a gratitude attitude. Be grateful you have a camera. Be grateful you have me. Be grateful we have stuff to be able to do it.
Take two. We were mostly through with the video, only to realize the mic wasn't on to begin with. Hey everybody.
Hi. All right, so getting started here. I'm taking an official poll for who thinks that this sweatshirt here, as you can see it says Polaroid. Does it look familiar? I thought so. Anyone who was an 80s or 90s child probably saw something similar to this as we were growing up. It is time for this wonderful thing to be donated to the archives of the 90s and retired to a thrift store. And I've been trying to get him to retire it to the thrift store. Hasn't worked so far, so I'm looking for your help. If you think that this wonderful 90s article, oh, and look at the colors on the sleeve. Oh, it's so 90s. Needs to be retired to the thrift store, please leave a comment and say, John, man, it's time for it to go. I'm sorry, brother. Okay?
She's out here bashing on Polaroids. We're not ever getting sponsored by them then.
Well,
so,
maybe they'll send you an updated shirt. From the 2000s.
People know that if you walk out with a Polaroid shirt, it means you take pictures.
From the 90s. All right, so here's what we're doing today. John, tell them what we're doing today.
So, I have been trying to teach Margaret family structure in Vietnamese. Well, in English first, then we translate to Vietnam. And she's been finding it amusing. Exactly. So, don't get dirt on my jacket. My nice white jacket. So anyway, as opposed to going through and just bam, 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 tell you about our family structures, I'm gonna quiz Margaret and hopefully you'll learn a little something along the way.
All right, let's go.
All right, we'll start from the top.
Okay, so basically we start off with, in America, you have grandfather and grandmother, and then you have a bunch of nicknames. In the Asian culture, or at least Vietnam, you have a name for your grandmother and your grandfather on your mother's side, and you have a name for your grandmother and your grandfather on, which did I say first? Basically, you have a different name for them if they're your mom's parents or they're your dad's parents. So here it doesn't matter. You'll have different nicknames for them. Papa, Dada, Mimi, Gigi, but over there it's just like one word for your mom's parents, one word for your dad's parents.
No. Yeah.
A different word for the dad and a different word, the grandfather and the grandmother on each side.
Yeah.
Each one has a different, so there's basically there's 4 grandparent names you have to learn.
Kinda, but not really. In America, you have grandpa, grandma, or you have, like, my niece would call my dad Pop because that's what he wanted to be called, and my niece would call my mom B because that's what she wants to be called. And that's it. You just have that. You don't have a separation between the husband side and the wife side.
Right.
In Vietnam, you have which means grandpa, and Ba, which means grandma. But then you have Noi, which means your dad's side, and you have Y, which means your mom's side. So when you go Noi, they automatically
know which one you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so then we have, when we got married, he basically got another set of parents, and I basically got another set of parents. Well, technically, I got 4 new parents because of his biological parents and his adopted parents. A lot of times here in America, when people get married, they'll call their in-laws, either by their first name, or they'll still say, like Miss Tracy, Mr. Brandon. Some people are still more formal, and they'll say, like for my parents, he could either say Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Johnson, and that's when it's still a more formal relationship, kind of. You could say Miss Tracy and Mr. Andrew, or you could just say, hey, Tracy and Andrew. So that's how we kind of have different levels of what you call your in-laws. Well, most
people do. The less formal one would just go by their first name and just call them. that in Asia.
And that's not really a southern thing. It's probably more of a northern thing here.
Yeah. And in Asia, once you get married in, you basically adopt the mom and dad too. Like Andrew, my uncle, would call his father-in-law, mother-in-law, what my aunt would call them. So it'd be like mom, dad, you know, or my dad would call my mom's parents, you know, whatever it is.
So I could say, so like he calls his parents B and Pop. So I could adopt that and call them B and Pop. Or I could call them, you know, by their, you know, I could use another way of referring to them. But in Asia, you have to realize how everything changes, so you don't just get to decide really what you call people. It's more of a set structure.
That's right.
So just like my in-laws, his adopted parents, told me what I could call them basically. In Vietnam, there's not really that option. It's set. So you don't, and that is the more, you were saying how you have a more, your family's a little more formal. Some people do get a little more informal. But generally speaking, you don't get to decide. It's already kind of pretty set. And I have noticed a lot about relationships are taken super seriously over there. You know, here we have, in America, we tend to have a lot of broken relationships. People getting divorced and breaking family ties that way. And I mean, there's just all, you know, we kind of have a whole different family structure and how we do things here. But over there, it's really kind of set in stone and they take it really seriously. And it would be almost insulting if you don't have the right name or if you don't bother to learn all the names. So if I talk to his aunt, you know, I need to make sure that I call her the right thing out of respect, so that I don't come across as disrespectful or not caring to learn the correct names that I should.
So in America, you have aunts and uncles. That's it.
We're so simple.
It doesn't matter if you're married in, you're not married in, you're older, you're younger, you know, just aunts and uncle. Hey, Uncle John. Hey, Aunt Carol. You know, basically that's it. In Asia, now this is the test right here to see how much she remembers. In Asia, like she said, the tree is so structured.
It's a pretty serious thing. For aunts and uncles, picture it with me, folks. Because trust me, you're gonna need to. We're gonna start with
blood.
We're gonna start blood. Makes it sound R-rated. Okay, so you have the blood aunts and uncles. And each of those aunts and uncles has a set name. And here's where the set name comes from. You have a set name if you're an aunt or uncle from your father, and you have a set name if you're an aunt and uncle from your mother. Now here's the next thing. You have in those divisions, so you have that drop down. You have another drop down for, are you the aunt and uncle from your father, and are they older or younger than your father? And are you the aunt and uncle from your mother who's older or younger than the mother? So my mom's sister is older than her. So my mom's sister, Aunt Elaine, has a different name than my mom's, she only has one sister.
Artificial sister.
Than my mom's artificial sister, Aunt Louise, who is younger than my mom. Okay, so then you have, so those are just blood relatives.
And then they go on and get married.
And then they go on and get married. And then you have people who are now coming into the family by marriage. John's uncle on his dad's side, who is older than him, has a wife. John's uncle on his dad's side, who is younger than him.
Looks like the blow of your people is back. My dad's older brother, I would call back. My dad's younger brother, I would call Ju.
So they have a different name, not just uncle.
Right. And then my mom's older sister, I would call, since half of my family's Chinese, I would call them E, but I don't know what that means in Vietnamese, so I don't know that either. But then for my mom's younger sister, I would call them Go. So maybe the older one is Yi. Yeah, maybe it's Yi. Let's go with that.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Who knows?
Then the tree expands a little bit. So what happens when you're married into the family? In America, you don't get, it doesn't change. Like, it's still aunt something.
Right.
So there's no designation to that when you go and talk to somebody. You're like, oh, that's Aunt Carol. And they're like, oh, okay.
And nobody cares which aunt it is on which side for the most part. We do care, we just don't specify it.
Yeah.
When you're married in, so if his uncle on his dad's side marries somebody, the fact that she's married in gives her a distinction. And then she has a separate distinction where she's married in to the younger or the older brother.
Yep.
That relationship will look a little bit different, and the expectations of that relationship are going to be a little bit different, right? So your blood aunt would be more inclined and feel more of an obligation in the Vietnamese culture to do things for you and feel a responsibility towards you that married in aunt would not, because they have a strong distinction between blood and not blood.
That's correct.
Whereas in America, your aunts and uncles are literally, they come as a pair. You know, you're the aunt and uncle together. You almost can forget who was married in and who wasn't.
We had to move inside because the rude people behind us were pressure washing their driveway or something.
How dare they, in their own time, in private on a Saturday.
You want to be in the video, buddy?
He's all happy.
So my aunt who lives here, she's my mom's sister. Technically, you know, it's not written down anywhere, but she's obligated to do certain things for me that an aunt who's married in is not. So in the Asian culture, people are like, oh, that's your go, and that means she's blood and she'd be more obligated to do it. Americans, not so much. There's no distinction.
There's no distinction. It's a preference thing here for who does what.
Yeah.
Some people do everything for people. Some people, they have nothing to do with it.
Sure,
So
that's
then the
correct.
next thing would be cousins. And you have cousin distinctions. You know, here in America, we have a cousin, and then you have a first cousin, second cousin, and we have that distinction. And cousins here, you can be anything from like best buddies and see each other all the time, do everything with them, to I see you once every 3 years at a family reunion.
Just a normal friend.
Yeah, and then you can have the ones that are just kind of like a friend. So you have different distinctions, but they're all called the same thing.
Cousin.
They're all a cousin.
And then, but in America, one thing that's weird is you have first cousin, second cousin, third cousin. In Asia, there's really none of that.
Right.
Yeah.
But in Asia, so there are the distinctions of whose child are you?
That's one thing we don't have distinction for.
I thought you did. It's not for that.
No. Cousins do not have a distinction of who's it belong to, if they're married in or not, if they're older or younger.
What?
There's not. But one thing that's weird about the Asian culture is, especially on the Vietnamese side, not so much the Chinese side, but on the Vietnamese side, it's based off of the rank of your parents in the hierarchy.
You mean if they're the brother or the son or daughter of the oldest brother versus the youngest?
For example, if I would have a child and my brother would have a child,
They're cousins.
they're cousins, but my brother goes on to have a child before us. So the
He's
child,
your younger brother,
yeah,
an older cousin.
that is not true in Vietnam.
Right.
In Vietnam, doesn't matter when you were born. If your dad is younger, in the hierarchy, you are always on a lower level. So I have a cousin who is 5 years older than me, but she has to call me An, which means older. So she have to call me An all the time.
Because your father is older in the family than her parents.
Than her dad, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
But on the Chinese side, since I'm half Chinese, kinda, not really, it doesn't matter. You're all cousins then.
Right. Okay, so then there's the brother and the sister.
On the American side, you have brothers and sisters. That's it. I have somewhere to go with this. There's no.
You sound so serious.
On the American side, there's not a lot of obligations, and I do want to preference it with. Sometimes you have different families.
Sure.
And so there are going to be families where
Different families do different things.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
Right.
Sure.
But in general, the blood bond, the level, no, not blood bond, the level of.
He's trying to say that in the Asian Vietnamese culture, that he and his brother have obligations to each other.
Correct.
That are going to be there no matter what their actual intimate relationship is with each other.
Correct.
No matter how much they hate each other or how much they love each other, stuff's going to have to be a certain way, simply because they are bloods from the same parents,
Correct.
brothers.
Correct.
So there are certain things that you're going to have to do for him since you're the older brother, and there are certain obligations that he's going to have to do for you as the younger brother.
Not much, but yeah.
Right. The weight's on you, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so
in America, that does not exist.
No, not really.
Yeah, there's no obligations at all. If you like them, some families are different, but if you like them and you love them, you could do something for them, but that's really up to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing that we've been talking about is the difference between overall the whole spectrum of family. The entire family, basically top to bottom.
On the American side, you have bam, bam, bam. That's it. Grandfather, mother, uncle and aunt, cousins. On the Asian side, you have, and it's like a tree with a lot of roots. It just grows.
Basically, in the end, in the whole family, in the Vietnamese culture, you are going to have a really strong bond with expectations for blood relatives.
Yeah.
So, you know,
blood is the most important.
Right.
I know I keep interrupting you, but blood
at least you see it, dear.
Yeah. Blood is the most important part in the whole family. It
Right.
comes back down to blood.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
In understanding family, sometimes I get confused on why certain things seem to be an obligation in his family, or when he's telling me stories about, say, other Vietnamese families, you know, how his other distant relatives do things. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense, you know, if they never see each other, they never talk to each other, why do they feel the need to like send money to them on certain times or do things for them? Because here in America, it's in a very different manner. But if you are blood, there are things that are going to be expected of you. Now, for people who live here, there are some people who probably break that connection. You know, they come here, they live here, they establish their lives here, and it kind of breaks off to the family over there. But so far, John has been able to kind of maintain relationships of some sorts with his family over there. So there are still certain things that you feel obligated to do or that are appropriate to do on the last Chinese New Year. You know, I never even knew what Chinese New Year was. We call his biological family and we talk about, you know, the Chinese New Year. We wish them a happy Chinese New Year because it's kind of like Christmas for us. Just like his parents, his biological parents know that he celebrates Christmas. They don't really celebrate Christmas, they celebrate Chinese New Year. So because of his blood relatives over there and the fact that he still keeps up with them, there is kind of that obligatory, and he just wants to call and be a part of a little bit of that Chinese New Year celebration. Oh, are you going to say hi?
Yeah, look, you haven't been on camera in a while. Yeah, say hi.
Hi, buddy. Yes, such a sweet boy. Mommy loves you.
He's camera shy still.
Very
We've been
shy.
working on it.
So anyway, some things are going to keep happening that sometimes don't make sense to me, but then I have to remember how that family structure is different from an American family structure. So to sum it all up, I have learned a lot about Asian/Vietnamese family structure, and it makes a little bit more sense why I can never remember the names of who's who, because they all have a little bit of a different name in a little bit of a different way. And you have to remember that kind of like first surname in addition to their actual birth name. So it's kind of like remembering two names for each person.
And it comes back to, you know, in America, there's no set structure, or the ranks, the hierarchy really isn't important.
Right, we don't care about who's older and who's younger.
Yeah, you know, I talk to Margaret, it's I and you. I talk to my parents, it's I and you. I talk to my aunts and uncles, it's I and you. In Asia, it's not that.
Right.
Like,
you have to address them accordingly with the right pronouns for their status.
Correct. Like, I would talk to my friends in certain terms, but When I talk to my parents, I don't say I say con, which sets you lower. It's a level of respect.
Right.
That is not in American language.
So, if you stuck with us this long, thank you. Don't forget to cast your vote about the Polaroid sweater. Oh, and I had this thought earlier. Have a new respect and understanding for why, in general, don't delete this out, it's true, Asian kids are just born brilliant from the second they start hearing words, because they are thrown into a whole different vocabulary than most kids ever have to deal with.
It's more structure, for sure.
They get about 30,000 probably new words. If anybody ever wonders why Asian kids are so smart, just remember, it starts at the very beginning and it starts with family. They have no choice.
I tried to tell Margaret that I want our kids to learn a timetable by the time they're in first grade, and she laughed at me. I was like, when I was in first grade, if I didn't know the times table, I couldn't come into the classroom. They just sent me home. True story.
True story, folks.
And we started learning calculus in the 6th grade. So.
And I applaud them. That's why they're brilliant.
Anyway, so behind us is our Christmas tree. Hopefully by the time you've seen this, we have uploaded our Christmas video, because it would really kill the joy, the surprise part. But if you haven't, I'll put a link up here and you guys go check it out.
Absolutely.
If you're new here, we appreciate you being here. I hope you subscribe and come back. And if you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. And we'll see you in the next video.
Bye, guys.
Bye.